Professor Alan Reed sat alone in his mountain observatory, surrounded by screens filled with data streams and mathematical formulas. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, forgotten in his intense focus on the latest set of equations. The soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment were his only companions. Outside, a storm raged against the observatory's reinforced windows. Earth's weather had grown more extreme over the years, but Reed barely noticed anymore. His enhanced mind was too busy processing complex mathematical patterns to care about the thunder. The signal cut through everything. Every screen in his observatory flickered, then displayed the same message in perfect universal standard. Warning! The following transmission contains the eternal question. Attempting to solve this mathematical proof has resulted in psychological damage across multiple species. By accepting this transmission, you acknowledge the risks. Reed's enhanced brain kicked into high gear, processing the implications faster than any normal human could. His fingers flew across the haptic interface, running authentication protocols. This was no prank. The signal came from deep space, bearing all the markers of official Galactic Council communications. He hesitated for only a moment before accepting the transmission. The equation that filled his screens was beautiful. Reed's breath caught in his throat as his mind began automatically breaking down its components. It was vast, spanning multiple dimensional frameworks he'd only theorized about. Parts of it seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that shouldn't be possible, yet clearly were. Most fascinating, he muttered, his enhanced memory already cataloging similarities to other mathematical concepts he'd studied. But this was different. This was bigger. A second message followed. The eternal question has remained unsolved for 47,000 galactic standard years. Multiple Class A civilizations have attempted solutions. Results: 27 cases of mass psychological breakdown, 12 instances of societal collapse. 3 species requested voluntary memory wipes. 1 species attempted to destroy all mathematical knowledge to prevent further attempts. This transmission serves as a civilization assessment tool. Your species' response will be monitored. Reed laughed. He couldn't help it. The Galactic Council was using this equation as a test, expecting failure. They didn't understand what they were dealing with when it came to humans, especially enhanced humans like himself. He pulled up his personal database, scanning through decades of research. Patterns began emerging in his mind, connecting to the equation in ways that felt natural, almost obvious. His enhanced neural pathways processed information at speeds that would have seemed impossible just a few generations ago. But even as his mind raced ahead, something else caught his attention. The equation wasn't just abstract mathematics. There was something familiar about its structure, something that reminded him of. He turned to look out the window, where lightning split the sky. The chaotic patterns of the storm, the way energy dispersed through the atmosphere, it echoed elements of the equation. Earth's natural chaos was reflected in those impossible mathematics. Reed's hands trembled slightly as he began making initial notes. The Galactic Council had made a crucial mistake. They had sent their impossible equation to a planet where chaos was the natural state, where life had evolved to understand and thrive in conditions that would seem horrifying to most spacefaring species. And they had sent it to him, someone whose enhanced mind could process that chaos in ways even his fellow humans couldn't imagine. "Let's see what you're really made of," he whispered to the equation glowing on his screens. Outside, the storm intensified, as if Earth itself was responding to the challenge that had arrived from the stars. Reed settled into his chair, fingers poised over his interface. He had work to do. The universe had just presented him with the ultimate puzzle, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The eternal question had found its way to Earth, and Earth was about to show the galaxy what a Deathworlder's mind could do. Reed stared at his reflection in the observatory's window. The early morning sun revealed dark circles under his eyes, but his enhanced mind remained sharp despite working through the night. 20 years ago, he had been one of 50 children chosen for the Intelligence Enhancement Program. Now he was the only one who still worked in mathematics. The others had all walked away from science, unable to bear the whispers and stares. He remembered the day everything changed. He had been presenting his doctoral thesis when someone in the audience stood up and shouted, "Cheater! His brain isn't natural." The room had erupted in chaos. His thesis was ultimately accepted, but the damage was done. No university would hire him for a teaching position. His research papers were rejected without review. Other scientists refused to collaborate with him. So Reed had retreated to this mountain observatory, built with his family's inheritance. Here, surrounded by computers and storms, he could work in peace, or at least he could until now. His computer chimed. Another rejection notice from the International Mathematics Journal. While your work shows promise, we maintain our position on not publishing research from enhanced individuals. Reed deleted the email without reading further. He had expected this response to his latest paper, but it still hurt. He turned back to the screens displaying the eternal question. At least this equation didn't care about his enhanced status. It only cared if he could solve it. "Time to make myself useful," he muttered, pulling up his initial analysis. The equation was like nothing he'd seen before. It seemed to describe something fundamental about reality itself, but every time he thought he understood one part, another would shift and reveal new depths. His enhanced mind could process the complex mathematical relationships faster than any normal human, but speed wasn't enough. This puzzle needed something more. As he stared at the flowing symbols, memories from his childhood surfaced. He remembered sitting in his backyard during storms, watching lightning dance across the sky. Even before the enhancement procedure, he had seen patterns in the chaos. His mother had encouraged his curiosity, buying him books about mathematics and physics. "You see things differently," she had told him. "That's a gift, not a curse." The enhancement had amplified his natural abilities, letting him process and understand those patterns at a deeper level. But it hadn't created them. The patterns had always been there, waiting for someone to notice. Reed pulled up Earth's weather data for the past century. He had an idea. If the equation really described fundamental patterns of reality, then maybe those patterns would show up in Earth's natural systems. His fingers flew across the interface, plotting data points and overlaying them with sections of the equation. His computer chimed again. This time, it was a message from Dr. Thompson, his only remaining friend from university. "The board is discussing your latest paper today. I'll try to support you, but you know how they are. Maybe it's time to try something else." Reed smiled sadly. Dr. Thompson meant well, but he didn't understand. There was no something else for a mind like his. The patterns, the mathematics, the endless pursuit of understanding. These weren't just work. They were who he was. He looked back at the eternal question glowing on his screens. The equation that had driven other species to madness. Maybe this was why he had been enhanced. Not to compete with normal humans, but to tackle problems they weren't meant to solve. "Let them reject my papers," he said to the empty room. "I'll solve the universe's greatest puzzle instead." Outside, the morning sun cast long shadows across the mountainside. Reed didn't notice. His enhanced mind was already deep in the equation's mysteries, following patterns that only he could see. The next phase of his work had begun. 3 days after receiving the eternal question, Reed made his first breakthrough. It came to him while he was watching a landslide through his observatory's cameras. The mountain had been unstable for weeks. Heavy rains had loosened the soil until gravity finally won. As thousands of tons of rock and earth crashed down the slope, Reed's enhanced mind captured every detail of the cascade. The way each rock's movement affected others. The patterns of debris flow. The mathematical beauty of destruction. That's when he saw it. "Computer, overlay landslide footage with equation segment 7, he commanded. The screens flickered, combining the real-world chaos with the alien mathematics. They matched perfectly. Reed's hands shook as he rushed to pull up more data. Earthquake patterns from the Pacific Ring of Fire. storm systems from the Atlantic, volcanic eruptions from Iceland. With each new dataset, his suspicion grew stronger. "The aliens got it wrong," he whispered. "They've been getting it wrong for 47,000 years." He paced the observatory, his enhanced mind racing through implications. The most advanced species in the galaxy lived on safe worlds, planets with stable climates, minimal geological activity, and predictable weather. Their mathematics reflected their reality: orderly, logical, and clean. But Earth was chaos incarnate. Reed pulled up the original warning message from the Galactic Council. "Multiple Class A civilizations have attempted solutions," he read aloud. Of course they failed. They never had to understand chaos to survive. Humans were different. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes. Earth threw everything it had at humanity. And humans not only survived, they learned to predict these natural disasters by understanding their underlying patterns. "Computer, display global thermal activity for the past year," Reed commanded. The main screen filled with a heat map of Earth. Hot spots pulsed like heartbeats where tectonic plates met. Ocean currents swirled in complex but predictable patterns. He overlaid another section of the eternal question. Another perfect match. "We see patterns in chaos because we had to," he realized. It was evolve or die. His enhanced mind began connecting dots faster than ever. Each natural disaster type matched a different part of the equation. The aliens had created a test that only a species from a death world could pass, and they didn't even know it. Reed's computer chimed with an incoming message. The observatory's sensors had detected unusual activity in orbit. He pulled up the feed and laughed. A Galactic Council observation ship hung in high orbit, barely visible to his enhanced instruments. They were watching, waiting to see if humanity would break like all the others. "You don't understand us at all," Reed said to the distant watchers. "We're not going to break. This is what we were born for." He turned back to his work with renewed energy. His enhanced mind might give him an edge in processing speed, but the real advantage came from being human. From being a Deathworlder who saw patterns in chaos as naturally as breathing. Earth rumbled beneath the observatory as another minor tremor shook the mountain. Reed barely noticed. He was too busy typing, his fingers flying across interfaces as he mapped the connections between Earth's chaos and the universe's greatest mathematical mystery. The pieces were falling into place. Where other species saw madness in the equation's chaotic elements, he saw familiar patterns. The same patterns that helped his ancestors predict weather, avoid natural disasters, and eventually build civilizations. "Earth didn't just make us strong," he said to himself as he worked. "It made us see the universe as it really is." Outside, storm clouds gathered again over the mountain. Reed smiled. More patterns, more chaos, more data. The eternal question was about to meet its match in a Deathworlder who had chaos in his DNA and mathematics in his enhanced mind. The headaches started on day 5. Reed was deep in the equation's core structure when the first pain hit. It felt like lightning inside his skull, sharp and sudden. His enhanced mind, usually so ordered and clear, filled with strange patterns and impossible shapes. He stumbled to his chair, gripping the armrests until his knuckles turned white. On his screens, the equation seemed to move, its symbols dancing and shifting like living things. He knew it was a hallucination, the same kind that had driven other species mad, but knowing didn't make it less real. "Computer," he gasped, "record mental status. Begin emergency log." The computer's calm voice responded, "Recording. Warning. Brain activity exceeds safe parameters. Recommended action. Immediate rest and medical attention." Reed ignored the warning. Instead, he forced his enhanced mind to compartmentalize, creating mental walls between different aspects of his consciousness. It was a trick he had learned years ago, when the enhancement first activated and threatened to overwhelm him with sensory input. "I control my mind," he said through gritted teeth. "My mind doesn't control me." The pain subsided, but the strange visions remained. The equation wasn't just mathematics anymore. It had become something else, something alive. Each symbol carried weight, had meaning beyond pure numbers. Reed's enhanced brain processed these new patterns automatically, even as part of him screamed that it wasn't possible. Computer, display Earth's magnetic field data. The screen filled with swirling patterns of electromagnetic energy. They matched his visions perfectly. Something about the equation was affecting his mind's ability to process reality itself. Reed stumbled to his small kitchen and swallowed 3 pain pills. His hand shook as he poured a glass of water. In the window's reflection, he saw that his nose had started bleeding. The Galactic Council's warning made sense now. The equation wasn't just complex, it was consciousness-altering. It showed the universe as it really was, not as most minds could safely perceive it. Other species had gone mad because they couldn't handle this shift in perception. But Reed's enhanced mind was different. The compartmentalization was holding. He could feel the equation trying to break through his mental walls, but he kept building new ones. Computer, new note, he commanded, wiping blood from his nose. The equation affects consciousness directly. Theory. It's not meant to be solved through pure mathematics. It's a key to understanding reality at a deeper level. The pain struck again, worse this time. Reed fell to his knees, his enhanced mind racing with impossible calculations. The equation was trying to show him something, trying to make him understand a truth too vast for normal consciousness to grasp. In his agony, a memory surfaced. His mother, sitting by his hospital bed after the enhancement procedure, reading from his favorite book about space. "The universe is stranger than we can imagine," she had said, "but that's why we keep trying to understand it." Reed forced himself to stand. Blood dripped onto his shirt, but he ignored it. The equation filled his screens, his mind, his entire world. Other species had run from this moment. They had chosen safety over understanding. But he was human. More than that, he was a human who had already survived having his mind transformed once. The enhancement had changed how his brain worked, yet he had adapted. He had learned to use it rather than fear it. "Show me," he whispered to the equation. "Show me what you're trying to tell us." The pain peaked, and with it came clarity. The equation wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a door to be opened, and his enhanced mind had just found the key. Through his observatory's windows, the sun set behind storm clouds, painting the sky in colors that seemed more vivid than ever before. Reality itself looked different to Reed's altered perception. The equation had changed him, but unlike those who came before, he was ready to embrace that change. On the 7th day, everything changed. Reed hadn't slept in 36 hours. Empty coffee cups littered his desk, and 3 different medication bottles stood open beside them. His enhanced mind was still processing data at incredible speeds, but the rest of his body was failing. Then he saw something that made him forget his exhaustion. "Computer, display thermal imaging of my brain activity from the past week." The screen filled with colorful images showing how his brain had changed while working on the equation. But it wasn't the changes that caught his attention. It was the pattern they formed. Now overlay Earth's seasonal temperature changes for the past decade. The patterns matched perfectly. Reed laughed until tears ran down his face. His whole body shook with the release of tension. "It was right in front of us the whole time," he said to his empty observatory. "We were thinking like machines when we should have been thinking like a planet." His fingers flew across the interface as he pulled up more data. The way his brain processed information matched Earth's natural cycles. The equation wasn't just about math or physics. It was about the relationship between consciousness and natural patterns. "Computer, compile all data from the past week. Focus on comparing my neural patterns with Earth's geological and weather patterns." As the computer worked, Reed thought about why other species had failed. They had tried to solve the equation with pure logic, like trying to understand a storm by measuring each raindrop. But you couldn't truly understand a storm unless you felt it, unless you lived in a world shaped by storms. The computer chimed. Analysis complete. The results confirmed what Reed's human intuition had already told him. His enhanced mind wasn't solving the equation. It was becoming part of it. The same way Earth's weather systems worked together. The same way tectonic plates shifted and reformed. The same way life itself had evolved on their dangerous world. Send message to Dr. Thompson, Reed commanded. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. Tell him I know why the enhancement program really worked. We didn't just make our brains faster. We made them more like Earth itself. The message sent, Reed turned back to the equation. Now that he understood what he was seeing, the solution seemed obvious. The Galactic Council had created a test that could only be solved by a species that understood chaos and order weren't opposites. They were the same thing viewed from different angles. His enhanced mind began the final calculations, but it wasn't working alone anymore. Every memory of storms he'd watched, every earthquake he'd felt, every pattern he'd noticed in nature, they all contributed to the solution. The enhancement had given him the processing power, but being human had given him the perspective he needed. Begin recording, he said. The eternal question isn't asking us to solve anything. It's asking us to recognize something we've known all along. On Earth, chaos and order dance together. Our brains evolved to see patterns in chaos because we had to. The enhancement program worked because it built on that natural ability. Reed's hands moved across his interfaces, bringing together everything he had learned. The equation's true meaning emerged. Consciousness itself was like a planetary system, full of storms and quiet moments, chaos and order, all working together in patterns too beautiful to ignore. Other species went mad because they tried to impose order on chaos, he continued. But humans, we learned to dance with chaos before we learned to walk. Outside his observatory, a new storm was building. Lightning flashed across the sky in patterns that exactly matched the equation's core sequence. Reed smiled. Even now, Earth was proving his point. He had found the answer not because he was enhanced, but because he was human. The enhancement had just helped him see what humanity had known all along. There was order in chaos, and beauty in both. The moment Reed broadcast his solution, the sky above Earth filled with alien ships. They appeared first as tiny dots on his observatory sensors, then as bright flashes visible even through the daytime sky. Within hours, over 50 Galactic Council vessels hung in orbit around Earth, their presence impossible to hide from even the most basic telescopes. Reed watched them through his observatory's main telescope. His enhanced mind calculated their energy readings automatically, enough power to destroy Earth's surface 10 times over. But they weren't here to attack. They were here because they couldn't believe what he had sent them. His computer chimed with an incoming transmission. Professor Reed. The voice said in perfect English, I am High Counselor Vax of the Galactic Council. Your solution to the eternal question has caused considerable concern. Reed smiled. His nose had stopped bleeding, and the headaches were gone. Once he had understood the equation, its effects on his consciousness had stabilized. Concern, he asked, or fear? There was a long pause. Both, the High Counselor admitted. You must understand. We've used this equation to test species for thousands of years. None have seen it the way you did. Because none of them evolved on a death world, Reed said. None of them had to understand chaos to survive. Your solution suggests that our entire understanding of consciousness and reality is flawed, the High Counselor said. Some council members believe this knowledge could destabilize galactic civilization. They want to suppress your findings. Reed looked at his screens, where the equation still glowed. You can't suppress truth, he said. The equation shows us reality, as it is, not as we wish it to be. My enhanced mind helped me process it, but any human could understand the basic concept. We live it every day on Earth. His sensors detected more ships arriving in orbit. These were different, smaller, faster, belonging to various species rather than the Council. News was spreading. The Deathworlders had done the impossible. The High Counselor's voice became urgent. Already, radical groups are calling for direct contact with Earth. They say your species has insights that could revolutionize everything from physics to philosophy. Others want to quarantine your entire solar system. They fear what other revelations might come from a species that can think like yours. And what do you think? Reed asked. Another long pause. I think we made a mistake. We assumed that order was superior to chaos. We built our civilizations on worlds where everything was predictable. But your solution proves that true understanding comes from embracing both chaos and order. Reed's computer showed him that his solution was spreading across the galaxy at light speed. Species that had never solved the equation were suddenly seeing it in a new way. His human perspective, enhanced by technology, but rooted in Earth's chaos, was changing how the galaxy thought. You should know, the High Counselor said. The Council is divided on how to proceed. Some want to offer Earth immediate membership in the Galactic Alliance. Others want to classify your entire species as a potential threat to galactic stability. Reed watched another group of ships appear in orbit. His enhanced mind calculated that at the current rate, there would be over 1,000 vessels above Earth by midnight. All because he had seen patterns in chaos that other species had feared to acknowledge. It doesn't matter what the Council decides, Reed said. The equation isn't just mathematics, it's truth. And now that we've shown the galaxy how to see it, there's no going back. The High Counselor was quiet for a moment. No, he finally agreed. There isn't. May the stars help us all understand what your species has unleashed. Above Earth, more ships continue to arrive, drawn by the news that a Deathworlder with an enhanced mind had shattered their understanding of the universe. The chaos was just beginning. And Reed, watching from his mountain observatory, couldn't help but smile. Chaos, after all, was what humans did best. 1 month after solving the eternal question, Reed stood before the World Science Council in Geneva. Through the conference hall's windows, he could see 3 alien ships hovering in the clear blue sky, permanent ambassadors from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The enhancement program was not a mistake, Reed said to the assembled scientists. Many of them had once rejected his work. Now they listened with complete attention. It helped us see what was already there, what every human instinctively knows from living on Earth. He gestured to the screens behind him, where his solution glowed in its full complexity. Our minds evolved to understand chaos because Earth demanded it. The enhancement just let us process that understanding faster. We succeeded where other species failed because we're children of a death world. Chaos isn't our enemy, it's our teacher. In the front row, Dr. Thompson nodded proudly. He had been the first to publicly support Reed's solution when it was announced. Now, he led the initiative to restart the enhancement program, this time with full global support. Reed's computer pinged with another message from the Galactic Council. They had sent 15 such messages today alone. Some species wanted to study human consciousness. Others wanted to learn how Earth's chaos had shaped human thinking. A few even wanted to temporarily settle on Earth, to experience the chaos that had created such unique minds. We stand at a crossroads, Reed continued. The galaxy now knows that humanity has something unique to offer, but they're also afraid of us. Not just because we're Deathworlders, but because we think in ways they never imagined possible. Through the windows, a sudden storm was building. The alien ships adjusted their position smoothly, adapting to Earth's weather just as humans had learned to do. The assembled scientists watched this dance between technology and nature with new understanding. The enhancement program worked because it built on what we already were, Reed said. We didn't need to suppress our chaotic nature. We needed to embrace it, to understand it. That's what the equation was really testing. Not our intelligence, but our perspective. He pulled up new data on the screens. Messages from across the galaxy showed how his solution was changing alien societies. Some species had already begun studying Earth's weather patterns, trying to understand how chaos and order worked together. Others were revolutionizing their technology based on principles revealed by the equation. But we can't let them think it was just the enhancement that solved the equation, Reed insisted. Every human child who's ever watched a storm, every farmer who's predicted weather from cloud patterns, every survivor who's learned to read nature's warnings, they all understand pieces of what I saw. We are all children of chaos. The storm outside intensified, lightning flashing between clouds. The alien ships moved in perfect harmony with the wind patterns, mimicking the way humans had learned to work with Earth's chaos rather than against it. The galaxy wants our insight, Reed said. But more importantly, they need to understand where that insight comes from. We're not just enhanced humans or Deathworlders. We're the species that learn to dance with chaos itself. Dr. Thompson stood up. The enhancement program is ready to accept new volunteers, he announced. But this time, we're also starting a cultural exchange. Let the galaxy learn from all humans, enhanced or not. Let them see how Earth shaped us all. Reed looked out at the storm, his enhanced mind automatically tracking the patterns in the lightning. Patterns that now, thanks to his solution, the whole galaxy could begin to understand. We solved their impossible equation, he concluded. Not because we're smarter, but because we're different. Because Earth taught us to see beauty in chaos, to find patterns in storms, to understand that order and chaos are two sides of the same coin. The assembled scientists rose in a standing ovation. Outside, lightning split the sky, and the alien ships danced with the storm. Earth's chaos had shaped humanity's mind, and now humanity would shape the galaxy's future. Reed smiled. The real work was just beginning.